to East Gippsland Shire Council's meeting of Tuesday the 21st of May 2024. East Gippsland Shire Council live streams, records and publishes its meetings via webcasting. These recordings are available for viewing by the public by following the link on Council's website. During the meeting, any members of the public who are addressing the Council will have their image and comments recorded. No other person has the right to record Council meetings unless approval has been granted by the Chair. In line with the Local Government Act 2020, councillors are able to attend Council meetings electronically or in person, and the meeting will be open to the public via live streaming. If technical difficulties are experienced with the live streaming during the meeting, we will adjourn until the issue is resolved. If technical issues cannot be resolved, the meeting may be postponed to a later time or date. East Gippsland Shire Council acknowledges the Gunai-Kurnai, Monero and Bidwell people as the traditional owners of the land that encompasses the East Gippsland Shire and their enduring relationship with country. The traditional owners have cared for and nurtured East Gippsland for tens of thousands of years. Council value their living culture and practices and their right to self-determination. Council pays respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people living in East Gippsland, their elders, past, present and future. A member's attendance can only be recorded as present at a council meeting when that member can confirm that they meet all of the following criteria. Firstly, that they can hear proceedings and can be heard by other members in attendance. And secondly, that they can see members in attendance and can be seen by other members. I'll now confirm with each councillor attending online in turn that they can see, hear and be heard by each other, and to note assurance from each that the location they are participating from is secure to ensure that confidential deliberations remain confidential. Councillor Buckley, can you see and hear us?
Yes, I can, Mayor.
Excellent. And can you assure us the location you are participating from is secure?
Indeed it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor White, can you see and hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Great. And can you ensure that the location you are participating from is secure?
Yes, it is.
Thank you very much, John. Agenda item 1.2 is apologies, and I believe we have apologies from Councillor Trevor Stowe.
That's correct, Mayor.
Thank you, CEO. Agenda item 1.3 is declarations of conflict of interest. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest for tonight's meeting?
Yes, I have a declaration of conflict of interest for items 5.1.1 and 5.1.2 in regards to a family connection with the contractors.
Thank you, Ms Johnson. Item 1.4 is confirmation of minutes. Do I have a motion to confirm the minutes of the council meeting held Tuesday the 30th of April 2024 are correct? Thank you, Councillor Reeves, and a second to Councillor Buckley. Councillor Reeves, would you like to speak to the motion? No. Councillor Buckley? No. Councillor Van Diggle, would you like to speak to the motion?
Question of clarification. Councillor Allan and I weren't there. Can we vote? Probably not. Well, we're not abstaining.
I'll seek some governance advice on that from...
Just don't vote. Sorry, I should know this by now.
Through you, Chair, you can
Thanks.
choose to vote or abstain.
Okay.
You may have watched the meeting online also, possibly. No? Very good. Is the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? In which case I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried, CEO. Thank you, councillors. The next, agenda item 1.5, is the next meeting of council. The next meeting of council is scheduled to occur on Tuesday the 4th of June 2024 at the Corporate Centre at 273 Main Street, Bairnsdale, commencing at 6 p.m. Agenda item 1.6 is requests for leave of absence. CEO, have we received any such requests?
Received no requests, Mayor.
Thank you. Now, I believe we have some junior Rotarians with us this evening from Tambo Upper Primary School. We have Kip Chandler and Ella Waite here with us. Now, Now, on behalf of the East Gippsland Shire Council, I will just present you with a small lapel pin.
That's right, we can wait.
Maybe Jane.
The pressure.
Good job.
Good job. All right.
Keep it up with a pen.
Okay. On three. 1, 2, 3, smile.
One with the Deputy Mayor as well?
Yes.
Why not?
Yes.
No.
All right, there you go. 3, 1, 2, 3, smiles. 3 distractions. Perfect, thank you. Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Well done. Thank you, everybody. We'll now move on to agenda item 1.7, which is actually a condolence. Councillors, tonight it's my sad duty to note that earlier this month, Joseph Cullen, a past Chief Executive Officer of Council, passed away. Mr Cullen joined Council in the year 2000 as a Director, and in February of 2001 was appointed as the CEO, a role he held until August 2003. Mr Cullen was a well-respected professional who was passionate about the transformative power of leadership, innovation and community development. I understand from those that worked with him that he was also an incredibly thoughtful person and was genuinely interested in everybody that he met. Our thoughts are with the Cullen family at this hard time. Vale Joseph Cullen. Councillors, on our call, on any councillor to move a motion of condolence. Councillor Uri, thank you. And Councillor Buckley as a seconder. Councillor Uri, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you for reading those words, though, Mr Mayor. I didn't know Joseph Cullen. He was the CEO before I joined council in 2005, but I hear those words describing him as a very well-liked person. So I appreciate the fact that we're moving this motion this evening to recognise his passing.
Thank you, Councillor Uri. Councillor Buckley, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just to offer our sincere condolences from the Buckley family to the Cullen family. It's always a great loss when we lose a dear member, and also just to acknowledge that the work that CEOs do and managers it's of a high velocity, and I respect them deeply for the work that they do, and certainly it's just a sad time for the family. So wishing them well.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Councillors, is the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? In which case I will put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that is passed unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We're at agenda item number 1.8, which is open forum. And the first one there is petitions. Do we have any petitions, CEO?
Thank you, Mayor. No, there are no petitions for council to consider this evening.
1.8.2 is questions of council. Have you received any questions for council this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. No questions have been received of questions of council for this evening.
1.8.3 is public submissions. Do we have any public submissions this evening?
No public submissions either this evening, Mayor. Thank you.
Agenda item 1.9 is items for tabling. Do we have any items for tabling?
No items to table this evening, Mayor.
Agenda item number 2 is notices of motion. Do we have any notices of motion?
We've received no notices of motion.
Agenda item number 3 is deferred business. Do we have any deferred business this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. And again, no deferred business this evening.
Item number 4 is councillor and delegate reports. Councillors, I encourage you to submit your delegate report to be included in the minutes of this meeting. And agenda item number 5 is officer reports. And our first report this evening is under the Assets and Environment portfolio. Mr McConnell, 5.1.1, Con 2024, 1610 Myer Street Lakes Entrance. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report recommending acceptance of the tender and awarding of a contract in relation to works in Myer Street Lakes Entrance. There were concerns raised in relation to the safety in this area, particularly associated with traffic and the like with the school, and so an audit was undertaken and design work undertaken to respond to that. This contract would provide for construction of curb and channel and wider footpaths along Myer Street, some additional footpath crossings, formalising the service roads, curb out stands on the intersections with Lambeth Street and School Street, and a range of other things that just really are designed to improve the safety of pedestrian and cars operating in that vicinity. I do note that as part of this work there was also some consideration given to works in School Street. At this stage, based on the community feedback at this stage, those works are not included in this contract, and there'll be further discussions between residents and the school in terms of the best way to resolve the matters that have been identified in School Street. So, councillors, you have a recommendation in front of you. And also, if you have any questions, Renee, the Manager of Infrastructure Projects, is with me this evening to assist in answering any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr McConnell. Councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Reeves.
Quick question. Thanks for the report. And this goes to a slightly bigger question about Myer Street and further along Myer Street, especially the commercial area. I'm just wondering, this piece of work concentrates on that school section.
Yep.
And I gather that I suspect this may raise the expectation about some further improvements in that commercial section. And the funding around this was LRCI funding predominantly, which I don't think is available anymore, or we haven't got another tranche of that. Anyway, it's just a question about how we then manage expectations. Yeah. And it's always a challenge when we do something well that it actually makes the older bit look not quite as good, Mr McConnell.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Councillor Reeves, and through you, Mayor. There have been discussions and matters raised in relation to that commercial sector of Myer Street. They currently meet the standards, but they are older than some of the other areas. And in fact, the issues have been more raised in terms of comparison with along the Esplanade in the commercial area in Lakes Entrance. So it is something we'll keep an eye on. What I would note is that, as you said, the LRCI, the Local Community Roads and Community Infrastructure Program, was a Commonwealth funding program, and unfortunately that has concluded. So there are a small number of projects that we have in process which are drawing on the last of that funding. The Roads to Recovery funding is continuing, and obviously we look forward to further advice about the funding that will be available through that source.
No, thank you. It's a good problem to have, that the improvements make what is a reasonable area look not quite as good. So we'll keep working on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reeve. Councillor White.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr McConnell, when all this was originally put out to the public, it did create quite a lot of angst amongst residents along those streets. What we're voting on tonight are there any unresolved issues, or are all those residents who were concerned about their access, are they now okay with this project going ahead?
Thanks, Councillor White, and through you, Mayor. Certainly, there was some extensive consultation that was undertaken in the area. I couldn't stand here and say every single person 100% agrees with what's there, but certainly the overwhelming, there's overwhelming support for the works that are contained in this report. What I would note, though, is again, there was concern about the works in School Street, and they've been set aside for the moment whilst we do some further work with the school and the residents to find an acceptable solution to that. And again, the other thing that I would just remind councillors is these works are the subject of a road safety audit, and so it actually raises some things that we do need to deal with to improve the safety in that area.
Thanks, Councillor White. Councillor Buckley, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So my question's around, I noticed that we had an external consultant that was engaged to produce the design to meet the infrastructure standards, Ausroad standards. And I'm just wondering, as we have made moves to use our own talents and reduce consultant fees, is this the sort of area that could be looked at to be able to do in-house, or is it a specialised area in this particular space?
Thanks, Councillor Buckley, and through you, Mayor. In this case, it's a relatively large project, and so whilst we do have some capacity in-house, it would be sort of effective as part of the design of what is a significant capital project to get a consulting firm to assist us with that, and that lets them bring the specialist road safety audit skills and things like that to the table as well. So it will depend on the project. We do have some capacity in-house, and we use that on smaller and simpler projects, but when they get larger, then typically we'll be using external design consultants to help us and make sure we get it right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Councillor Uri, you have a question. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. My question relates to something that arises by looking at these two contracts on our agenda tonight. And the second contract required a probity review. This first one apparently hasn't required that. I'm just wondering if you could explain why there wasn't a need for that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Uri, and through you, Mayor. So the requirement for a probity audit is set out in our procurement policy. So you can refer to that in detail at your leisure, but there is a financial threshold over which triggers the requirement for a probity audit. And so in one case, the recommended contract is below that, in one case, the recommended contract's above that. But we will also use probity auditors where there's other things at play that raise, questions that we need to be additionally confident around probity, such as if there was an in-house bid competing with an external bid, or other matters that raise questions that we want to ensure that everyone can have confidence about the integrity of the process. But most commonly, it's triggered on the basis of the value of the contract.
Thank you, Councillor Uri. Councillors, were there any further questions of officers? No, I see none, in which case there is a motion before us. Councillor Allan, happy to move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Reeves, thank you. Councillor Allan, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I think when you travel Myer Street in Lakes, the top section from O'Neill's Road down to Coates Road is fantastic. Then you've got this section in the middle down to Church Street that is unchanged in many, many years, and in many ways substandard. And I really welcome this project going ahead. I think it's going to build on the great work that's been done on the Esplanade and the contract that was let at the last meeting for the Marine Parade. I think it's going to be a hugely beneficial thing for the town, and I welcome it and look forward to the disruption going up and down the hill for the next few months while it comes to fruition. And I also would like to especially make mention of the consultation that took place, particularly over School Street, where staff came, heard and heeded the message of those people. And I think that's very, very important in these things, that, you know, we don't just tell people what they are going to get, we listen to what they need. So I want to thank staff for that. And I think it's a great thing for the town, and I urge councillors to support this motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Allan. Albert, I wonder if I could just get some governance advice. The motion we see on the screen,
Populate it.
we need to populate that now, or do I call for seconders?
The mover usually populates that.
Yeah, so
Okay, I might ask that you please do that then. In that
yeah,
case,
so if
Councillor
we
Allan,
could
thank you.
populate that, please, Vanessa. Right, so do you want me to read that out, or is...
That would be preferable, yes,
Yeah,
so it's
all
just
right.
the successful tenderer's
So
name and the
we
amount, I
receive
think,
and
are the
note
important
this report
parts.
and all attachments pertaining to the report, and accept the tender submitted by Whelan's Group Investments Proprietary Limited, CON 2024-1610 Road Safety Upgrades, Myer Street, Lakes Entrance, for the contract amount of $1,458,774.34, exclusive of GST. Do we need the rest of it, or?
No,
No,
I think
that's the
we
important bit.
can take
Yeah,
that as read.
so we take that as read, yes.
Thank you, Councillor Allan.
And
Councillor Reeves, would
I'm
you
happy
like
to second what is on the screen.
Thank you very much, and would you like to speak to that at all?
No, thank you. That's fine.
Very good. Councillors, is the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? No, I see none. In that case, I will put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. That moves us to agenda item 5.1.2, which is another contract under Assets and Environment Directorate. This one is Con 2024-1636, the Mallacoota Streetscape. Mr McConnell, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report recommending the acceptance of a tender and awarding the contract in relation to streetscape works in Mallacoota. The streetscape works are along Maurice Avenue in the main sort of commercial part of Mallacoota, and really the intention with that has been to again facilitate the proper movement of vehicles, but also pedestrian safety throughout that area, as well as providing a refresh of that area and the opportunity for us to include a range of elements that make it a really attractive place that will enhance Mallacouta's aesthetic as a tourist location and add to the economic outcomes for that shopping centre as well. So it involves reconstruction, redevelopment of the carriageway, parking, footpaths, curbs, new drainage infrastructure and so on. So there's quite a significant amount of work that's required to do that, and councillors, I draw your attention to the schematic and attachment 2 that sets out all of the works that's proposed in relation to that. The other thing I draw to your attention is in the circulated agenda, the recommendations referred to this being subject to receipt of a probity report, and I do just draw to your attention that probity report has been received and circulated, and so when we do go to the recommendation, the officer's recommendation has been amended slightly just to reflect as we normally would, the noting of that probity report rather than it being subject to. So councillors, as with any other contract, happy to take questions. If you have questions in relation to the tender process or the detail of the tender process, again, just a reminder that that information is confidential, and if you wish to discuss it, we'll need to move into the confidential session. And again, Renee, our Manager of Infrastructure Projects, is here to assist with any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr McConnell. Councillor Greason, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr McConnell. This project's been on the books for quite a while now, and there are a number of organisations, Mallacoota organisations, been involved in consultation and the toing and froing. Can you talk a little bit about how people are feeling about the proposal as it stands now?
Yeah, thank you. So thanks, Councillor Greason, and through you, Mayor. You're right, there has been a fair bit of consultation, and if you look at the attachment that's been pulled together around that consultation, you'll see that it's been quite extensive. I won't, again, as with the other report, I won't pretend to say that absolutely everyone in the town is 100% around every aspect of the project, but we have, I think, reached a position where there's good support for the project. And comfortable to proceed. What I would note is that has taken some time. So the project has been on foot for a number of years, and in stepping through that detail of the consultation and then the design elements that follow from that, it has taken a little bit of time, which has contributed to, I suppose, some of the tender outcomes as well as we step through that. So I think we're in a confident place to move forward with this one. But yeah, there has been quite significant engagement, and probably even more engagement than you would often have in a project of this kind.
It's very pleasing. Thank you.
Councillor Buckley, you have a question of clarification. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mayor. My question is in regards to the businesses. This, often when we're doing major works businesses can be affected by the works going on around them. Has there been good consultation and with the businesses that may be affected, and has there been agreement in timing, because we certainly wouldn't want to interrupt their I know we're going into the quiet season, so I suppose my question is around the intention of when the works will begin and end, and that everyone's happy with that.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley, and through you, Mayor. You're right, any project of this kind is going to result in some disruption, and so it's really important that we take that into account. We have thought carefully about the timing. That's why, amongst other things, it's presented to you now, because that does provide us with the opportunity to ensure that the works are completed before the Christmas period, which is really the most popular time in Mallacoota. So we've certainly taken that into account, and timeliness is one of the critical issues in consideration of this contract.
Very
good to know.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Councillor Uri.
Thank you, Mayor. Just two questions, please. One in relation to the EV charging station, for the benefit of those watching. I did think that was going to be part of the streetscape, but whether that's part of this now or whether it's a later stage, one question. The other one relates to the plantings in the streetscape, whether we've taken into account the amount of shade that those trees will provide, or are we yet to see a detailed plan of the particular trees?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Uri. So firstly in relation to the EV piece, and then I might see if Renee can assist with the tree component, but certainly there is an intention and as part of the project, to install an EV charging station, but it is round the corner from the main street. So it's in Greer Street is the proposal, and for there to be a charging station. If you're familiar with the area, that's only a few tens of metres really away from the main street. So it's in that same that same precinct. In terms of the approach to the vegetation and landscaping, is there anything, Renee, that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, there is a line item in the current contract where that is dedicated to the landscaping components, which includes all native plantings and street trees, and that's going to be the street trees and the species are going to be worked in consultation with the PRG group. So that's in the process now.
Yep.
Terrific. That sounds great.
And certainly shade is one of the factors we can take into account with that.
Yes, excellent. Just a further question about the EV charging station. Sorry, is that going to be provided sometime soon? Is that, or do we have to wait?
I might, unless someone else is aware of it, I might need to take that one on notice in terms of the time.
Okay.
It's
If I may, Mayor.
Please do.
I'm wearing my old hat. I believe it's part of the works that are going on at the moment. So it'll be installed around the back and as part of the new car park, which is the final component of the pavilion, the new pavilion.
Okay, fantastic.
I think I may even have seen an image of the slab being poured recently, so
Right.
certainly progressing. Thank you. Councillors, were there any further questions? No? Mark's happy to move. Thank you. Councillor Reeves. Would anybody like to second the motion? Councillor Greason. Thank you. And happy for you to speak to the motion, Councillor Reeves.
I'll speak to the motion when we populate the motion with the details, if that's all right, please. And I will read then that we received this report and all its attachments, and the important is note 2, councillors, that we accept the tender submitted by Whelan's Group Investments Pty Limited for contract 2024 1636 Mallacoota Streetscape for the contract amount of $2,871,408.57 exclusive of GST, and dot points 3, 4 and 5 as written. I'm happy to move that.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Would you like to speak to the
Do
matter?
I need a seconder before I speak to it?
I believe we have a seconder in
Got a seconder?
Councillor Greason.
Great.
We just
Terrific.
confirm that you can.
Thank you.
You are affirming and seconding the details on the screen there?
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Well, councillors, my relationship with Mallacoota goes back more than 30 years, about 35 years, and this streetscape was contemporary and funky back then, and now it's ready for a refresh. And I think that it's an absolute tribute to the project consultancy group that have been brought together in this particular project, and that group has been made up by members of Mad Barter, Madra and business stakeholders, and I think that's really fantastic. And as you noted, Mr McConnell, don't let perfect get in the way of good and really good, and I think this is a really good outcome. I acknowledge the responsiveness of the landscape architects, Mesh, and the work that they did in the consultancy, and really appreciate having a copy of that community engagement report. That's really good as part of this particular piece of work. I think that it's really important, the question that was asked about the timing of the site activation, and to ensure that we get that ready for the peak season in December this year. But this is a great project, and I really look forward to seeing it refreshed and renewed. It's a great thing for Mallacoota, and really look forward to it, and absolutely thoroughly recommend that you support it, councillors, which I'm sure you will.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Councillor Greason, would you like to speak to the motion?
I can't add to that. Thank you, Councillor.
Very good. Councillors, is the motion opposed? Oh, Councillor Buckley, would you like to speak to the motion? Please do. You are currently on mute for us. I'm not sure if that's your end.
Oh, so sorry. I've
No
done
worries.
that for a while. Look, just to say that it's a big investment for the ratepayers of East Gippsland. It's one that that shows that how important Mallacoota is to our region, even though they are so far away from a more remote township of our region. I think that that it's such a wonderful part of our coastline, and the people are incredible people, having lived there briefly, you know, myself in the past. I just think that I look forward to seeing the project go really smoothly, and that I hope that the people of Mallacoota will be very happy with the outcome of this project. So I do support it.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Councillors, would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Buckley, I'm taking it that's a legacy hand I can see there. Thank you. If no one would like to speak for or against, I'm happy to put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that is unanimous. CEO. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to agenda item. Welcome back, Ms Johnson. 5.2.1, and thank you, Renee, which is in the Business Excellence Directorate, and the agenda item is submission to inquiry into local government sustainability. Thank you, Ms Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, before you, you have a report titled Submission Inquiry into Local Government Sustainability. The report is seeking Council's endorsement of our Council's submission into the House of Representatives Standing Committee of Regional Development, Infrastructure and Transport for consideration. The high-level points are: the House of Representatives Standing Committee on Regional Development, Infrastructure and Transport has commenced a new inquiry into local government sustainability. The inquiry is to examine the financial sustainability and funding frameworks of local government. From our perspective, we welcome the inquiry into local government sustainability. Our council, as we all know, works hard to deliver the core services our community expects from ratepayers' money. However, we are often required to deliver many of the federal and state government priorities with little or no funding. As a level of government closest to the people, which you all know, and the number of services that directly benefit the livability and productivity of our communities, we have programs that cover a broad range of areas such as economic, social, environment and livability. Each of the programs we know delivers important benefits to the community and have been developed to meet community expectations. Financial sustainability of our council underpins all we deliver to help our communities thrive. The themes of the recommendations that we've detailed in our submission are asking for funding that's reflective of the contribution that we make. And what this means, in essence, is asking the Australian Government to increase the financial assistance grants to at least 1% or more of the Commonwealth tax revenue, which we believe is the fair amount to be able to cover the important services that we deliver, as well as a whole raft of other parts to that, but that's the headline. Roads. In the country, we all know that's how we connect. We need funding that's reflective of the amount of roads we have and maintained and deliver, including maintaining roads to future-proof for extreme weather events. Funding certainty to plan for our future, virtual connectivity, changing climate, and impacts of extreme weather events, and housing availability. There are recommendations on page 49 of the report for your consideration. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Johnson. Councillors, are there any questions about the report and the submission, in fact? No, I see none. Councillor Greason?
Thank you very much. I think this is a really excellent paper, and especially given you pulled it together so quickly in this submission to the federal government. But this is a federal government submission, isn't it? It's not about state issues, and so it's not about some aspects of the paper, such as rates. Is that correct? Such rates capping, sorry. Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Grecian. Yes, you are quite right. This is a federal government inquiry. However, there will be a state government inquiry that is coming later. Now, yes, there's certain things that the federal government has much more power and authority to change, including the financial assistance grants, which is one of the headlines of the submission in this. Rate caps is a state component. It's mentioned in the submission in relation to the fact that that is part of the funding component as to how we deliver our services across our communities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greason. Councillors, are there any further questions around the submission? Councillor Uri, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't actually have a question, but I'm happy to move the motion if there are no further questions.
Are there further questions, councillors?
Sorry, could I just have a little...
A moment.
Yes, conferral with the CEO.
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr Mayor. If there are no further questions, I would like to move my own motion.
An alternate motion?
An alternate motion?
Certainly.
To the one that's in the recorded in the papers, yes. So thank you. That's now up on the screen. So the important change here is in point number 2. So endorses the submission provided at attachment 2 with removal of the reference to recommendations suggesting alternative approaches to rate capping, which is a state issue. And the rest is according to what's displayed.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Uri. Councillor Buckley, is that a question, or are you looking to second that motion?
Happy to second the motion. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good, thank you. And Councillor Uri, now you have a second. You may like to speak to the motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councillor Grease, and I think this is a very good submission, and I thank Sarah, Ms Johnson, for its preparation. Obviously, this is an important aspect of our council's work, but it's important right across the sector. And I think the points raised in our submission are all very pertinent to us. We do welcome the inquiry at federal level, and also, as has been mentioned, there's one coming for the state level as well. The reason for suggesting that we remove the suggestions in this submission around the rate capping is because this is the federal government inquiry, not the state one. Also, I think it probably needs, although this council has a set approach in our that we've already settled on for in our advocacy strategy, I think it requires more thinking about, because it's quite the issue of rate capping is quite detailed. One of the things that was proposed was that we ask for a different rate capping to be set for rural and regional areas as opposed to urban areas. I think that needs a lot more thought given to it. Not that any council has to increase their rates by up to the cap. There's always the potential to go lower than that, but that's the maximum. However, just in summary, I think it needs more thought, and that's why I've suggested we take that out of this submission. But other than that, a very good paper. Thank you.
Councillor Uri. And Councillor Buckley, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just to say, I hope that we can be successful in the asks. It's the amount of work that local government does, and what I see as some areas of extreme cost shifting. I think that 1% of federal funding is certainly warranted. So thanks very much to the officers for putting it together, and I think Mendy's covered off on all the other stuff.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Councillors, is the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Greason.
Look, I just want to add what I said before. I think this is actually an important paper, not just because it's an excellently argued submission to the federal government's request from us, but also because it provides some extremely useful information about our Shire and about how we operate. And I actually recommend it to all East Gippslanders to read it and to have it as a reference document. It's very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greason. Councillor Reeves.
Look, I think this, thanks Mayor, I think councillors, this is a really important piece of work to prosecute to the federal government. And I just want to quote Elgar and the way that local government does the heavy lifting for all levels of government in Australia, including providing urban infrastructure, mitigating externalities in urban development, placemaking and visitor economy, providing land for housing, better local labour markets. We develop labour markets. We're involved at the front line in climate mitigation and adaptation. We provide land for business clusters, innovation, and we deal with the circular economy. And we do all of that on a fraction of the tax take. About 4% of our individual tax burden is local government. About 1 in 4 councils rely on 20% of their income from federal assistance grants. And we're pretty close to that. I think we're something like 18%, CEO. So the work that we do on a fraction is absolutely fundamental and important. So to prosecute this piece of information to the federal government is really important. So thank you so much, officers, for putting this together, and let's hope that it is heard loud and clear. And we will certainly be advocating and trumpeting this at ELGA conference in Canberra.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? No, in which case I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that is unanimous, CEO. Thank you, councillors. Agenda item 5.2.3, still within the Business Excellence Directorate, is local boundary realignments for Lakes Entrance and Kalimna.
Thank you, Mayor.
Sorry, I've got that wrong. I've jumped one there. It's local boundary realignments, Eagle Point, Paynesville, Newlands Arm, Raymond Island, Boole, Poole and Metung. Agenda item 5.2.2.
Thank you, Mayor. And this goes to one of the really important parts of what local government do deliver for our communities. So the paper that you've got in front of you is seeking Council's endorsement of the proposal to amend a locality boundary between Eagle Point, Paynesville, Newlands Arm, Raymond Island, Boole, Poole and Metung. Now, the reasons for this is that Ambulance Victoria have asked us to amend the locality boundary between those areas. It's because the existing locality boundaries have resulted in discrepancies between the locality of the water structure compared to the locality of the land associated with the structure. Ambulance and Victoria have advised that this has got the potential to cause confusion and risk community. So if we're thinking about where they're being called out to, that's the really important part here, which could result in delays to response time, and we all know how important their response times are. The Council has an obligation to consider this and consider this promptly, which is what we're doing tonight. The proposal, which you can see in the attachment to the paper, moves the alignment to the centre of the navigation markers. There's a lot of really pretty colours that denote where it is now and where we're looking to move it to. There's been consultation taken on the proposed locality realignment, and we've got no feedback from the public, which is likely because it doesn't actually impact any public properties. We did, however, get support from the proposal from Geographical Names Victoria, Ambulance Victoria, Parks Victoria and DECA. So in accordance with Section 10 of the naming rules, we require a copy of the minutes from a council meeting showing endorsement of the proposal to be attached so that we can do the submission process. There are recommendations on page 91 of the report for your consideration. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Johnson. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification on the boundary realignment? Councillor Buckley, please go ahead.
Yeah, so just to interpret that for the layperson, that means that nobody's numbers on their houses will be changed, correct?
That is correct, Councillor Buckley.
Thank you.
Any further questions, councillors? No, in which case there is a recommendation in the report. Do I have a mover? Councillor Allan, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Reeves, thank you. Councillor Allan, would you like to speak to the motion?
Only to say that as someone that lived and worked on the Gippsland Lakes all my life, I was astounded to know that Poole boarded silt jetties. And I could immediately see the confusion that it would create for emergency services when everyone knows Poole is 6 or 7 miles away. So I think that the solution that you've come up with using the channel markers is a sensible one and clearly defines the separate areas, and I think it's a great outcome, and congratulations to those who drew it up.
Thank you, Councillor Allan. Councillor Reeves, would you like to speak to
Thank you. Just to briefly say, I've seen this in a couple of other localities as well, where we've had dead-end roads and different postcodes even on the same road, and that's caused confusion. So the response time on water, for example, is even greater. So to tidy this up, to make it clearer and easier for emergency services is a great idea. Yep, absolutely endorsed.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Councillors, does anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? No, in which case I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. There you go. Agenda item 5.2.3 is a similar item. Locality boundary realignment, lakes entrance and Kalimna. Thank you, Ms Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. So this paper is seeking the same. So we've got a locality boundary realignment, lakes entrance and Kalimna, which is seeking your endorsement to the proposal to amend the locality boundary between those two places. The high-level points again, this was received by a request on Ambulance Victoria, and it was again about the confusion that's been created between the sections of Apex Park, the main boat facilities and all jetties along Marine Parade in Lakes Entrance, currently in the Kalimna locality. We did consultation again about the proposed locality realignment, and to use Councillor Buckley's terms, no one's address was actually impacted by the realignment. We did, however, get support for this one again by GNV, which is Geographical Names Victoria, to use the proper term, Ambulance Victoria, Parks Victoria and DECA. Don't ask me to extend that one really quickly. In accordance with Section 10 of the naming rules, Geographic Names Victoria requires a copy of the minutes from the council meeting showing your endorsement of the proposal, and that has to be attached to part of the submission process. Also present, I should have mentioned before, is our Finance Manager, Liz Collins, who is available to answer any questions of a technical nature as well. Thank you, Mayor. The recommendations on page 97 are now for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms Johnson. Councillors, are there any questions of a technical nature or otherwise? No, I see none. There is a recommendation in the report. Councillor Allan, thank you for moving that. And a seconder, Councillor White. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Only to say again that it just makes sense, and well done again.
Very good. And Councillor White, would you like to speak to the motion?
And pretty much to add to what Arthur said, when you look at the map and you look where the delineation line is, it's so simplistic, it's almost, I'm aghast as to why this wasn't done a long time ago. So I fully support what's being done by council at this stage, and obviously that will make a big difference, particularly along Marine Parade for emergency services.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillors, would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? No, in which case I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. CEO. Thank you, councillors. Moving right along the agenda to item 5.2.4, which is the Council Plan Progress Report Quarter 3, 2023-24. Sarah, I believe this one is with you as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, so this report is an incredibly important report which reports on our progress to the council plan. So this is the focus on what we want for East Gippsland now and in the future, and documents how we're going to work towards this. And it goes back to all the things that we were talking about with the inquiry into financial sustainability of the council. Highlights for this particular period include the renovation of the old creche room at the Aquadome, which has been turned into a health and wellbeing space, the planning scheme amendment for the housing and settlement strategy, which has been prepared to formally initiate the planning scheme amendment, development of a Shire-wide stormwater management plan, including the review of existing stormwater management plans, and a business health check program, which has been implemented to inform and evaluate where businesses are and what future business programs need to be developed. And finally, engagement for the Bairnsdale 2050 project having commenced using a range of engagement approaches. I'd also like to note that 90% of the actions are currently in progress across the council plan at the end of this particular quarter.
Thank you, Ms Johnson. Councillor Allan, I might just ask you to press a button on that dinging device if you can. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you.
Councillors, are there any questions about the progress report as tabled? There's a lot in the report. Councillor Buckley, please go ahead. Oh, you might be on mute.
90%. Yeah, that's quite an achievement and good to see. So having said that, can we have a little bit of a brief understanding of the behind schedule items? There's only a couple there. If we could have a brief explanation as to why some of the items, the initiatives are behind schedule.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. So do you want all of them, or do you want the headline ones in the first pages of the paper, as in the first one being the design and progress development for organic waste processing facility? Yes? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
No? Absolutely, thank you for clarifying. I might go over to General Manager Stuart McConnell for that particular piece, if you can help with the some of the detail.
I might need to just do some checking or potentially check with the CEO whether you're aware of where that particular one is. If not, I can take it on notice and give you a further update on that. Just a moment.
Thank you, Mr McConnell, through you, Mayor. And just for those that are in the gallery, an explanation that Mr McConnell's only been in this role for about 2 weeks, so he's still coming up to speed with some of the projects. Councillor Buckley, this one, there were some delays in making sure that we had all the approvals in place from the EPA as we went through the process, and we needed to do some work around our development plan to ensure that it covered this area, which led to a slight delay in the actual design and progressing of this facility. It's on track and it will still continue from this point forward, but that did take a little longer than was anticipated at the time. So we have full confidence that it will be delivered within an appropriate time, and it's still progressing well, but it did take a little longer than anticipated to get all those approvals in place. Thank you.
Thank you, and apologies, Stuart. I probably should have given you some forewarning.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Councillor Reeves.
Thank you. Just further to Councillor Buckley's question, it's just that note in the report describes the anticipated lodgement of a planning permit application. So we're the planning authority and our waste management team are the proponent on this particular case. Is that correct, CEO?
Yep.
Mr McConnell? Yep, okay.
So you recall from time to time, some of Council's projects are ones that require a planning permit, and they come to the table here for consideration. Usually our practice now is also to work through an independent consultant, so we create some separation in the role of applicant and assessor of that application.
Very good. Councillors, are there any further questions? Councillor Greeson, please go ahead.
Thank you. It's really good to see all of the capital works and major projects happening, and in particular Slip Road Maritime Precinct. And there's a lot of interest in this from the community, and I'm just wondering if we could have a bit of a update on where that's at and how it's going.
Thanks, Councillor Gresham. So, and through you, Mayor, the contractors are back on site and progressing the work associated with the seawall and the jetties. So that's the key thing at the moment. If you drive past, you'll see material stockpiled, etc., about getting that underway. So that work, as you recall, went back through a redesign. It's now full steam ahead to get that work in place.
Thank you.
Councillor Uri, please go ahead.
There are so many positive stories in this report. It's fantastic, and I hope we can focus on those as we look at moving the motion. But I just did want to ask about the action 5.4.1 on page 158 of our notes, which is there was an intention to do an organisational capability review. The commentary on that is that because of the changes to executive leadership, that's no longer considered the most appropriate or useful thing to undertake, and I completely accept that. I wondered, though, what the organisational service plan process is which needs to precede that the next process. It seems there are two processes in that. It might be a question for you, perhaps CEO, is it?
Thank you, Councillor Yuri, and through you, Mayor. I'm happy to answer this one. The first part was yes, this was a project that was being led by the CEO and the Office of the CEO, and given the resignation of the CEO and his departure from the organisation early in January, it seemed that it was inappropriate to continue with that until we had a new permanent, well, an ongoing position, an ongoing CEO. However, there are a range of other organisational reviews that we can still continue, and a lot of those are being led through the business excellence area and are to do with service reviews and making sure our business planning is aligned with service planning. So when you see your our business planning moving forward, and it will be very much aligned to service planning. So that will help to us to inform some of our organisational review and our overall organisational plan. So rather than do the organisational plan in isolation, we're doing that service planning work first, and that will lead to an organisational plan. Thank you.
Thanks, CEO.
Thank you. Are there any further questions of officers, councillors? Councillor Buckley, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Look, I have a question in regards to the strategic indicators on page 127. Can I just have a very brief understanding? There's, in regards to the rural land use strategy planning scheme amendment, it's certainly on target, but I'm just keen to let the public know what the process is and how that will proceed forward into the future.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley, and Mayor, through you. Sorry, just change of roles. I had to check. As councillors will be aware, Council considered the rural land use strategy, adopted the rural land use strategy. To give its effect, it needs to be incorporated within the planning scheme. The various drafting of documents associated with that is essentially completed. It will come to Council for consideration most likely in the July meeting of Council, along with a number of other elements of planning scheme amendment that are required. So that's the intention. So that will be then a matter for Council to consider. That process is to initiate the amendment process. So importantly, what Council is doing at that process is firstly going out to seek community feedback on that actual planning scheme, and there's an exhibition process associated with it, so there's opportunity for feedback. And then on the assumption that there is feedback that needs to be worked through and resolved, it's likely then that the matter will be referred to an independent planning panel, which is essentially the independent umpire, to consider those things, and that planning panel would then give advice back to Council to consider before Council then makes another decision about whether or not to continue with that planning scheme amendment and forward it to the Minister for consideration. So there's a few steps to go through, more consultation in a formal sense, and also potentially the advice of the independent planning panel as the kind of the independent advisor or umpire on the matter.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Councillors, any further questions of officers? There's a recommendation in the report, so I have a mover. Thank you, Councillor Greason, and Councillor Yuri to second. Councillor Greason, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you very much. Yes, I would. Look, this progress report's really important. We see it 4 times a year. It tells us how the council's going in implementing its programs and meeting its obligations. So, and it contains a lot of very good information. And, you know, and I'll just use one example I think is really one of the major initiatives commencing implementation of organisation-wide strategies to embed Aboriginal engagement in the organisation. And the East Gippsland Shire Council has been working hard to build this engagement, from yarning to elders to building opportunities to build for infrastructure projects. So I think this is really important for the council and the community, and I do congratulate the CEO and the executive officers and staff and their commitment to this amongst all of the programs being developed and delivered by the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greason. Councillor Uri, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, Mayor, just to say that I support Councillor Greason's comments. I think we can all be proud of this report. I think that it represents a heck of a lot of work over the last months by the officers of this council and the councillors, of course, but it is an important document. I just wanted to highlight some of the capital works, because there have been some huge projects that have been carried on which are sort of multi-council. They've run across terms of council, particularly the World Centre, the Eagle Point Hub, and also the Omeo mountain bike tracks. They're three very substantial projects, which are, well, the Eagle Point Hub is complete. The other two have got a little bit to run, but I think the progress with those huge projects has been quite phenomenal, and I'm very proud of them. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Uri. Councillors, is the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Buckley.
Yes, I'd like to speak for the motion. I agree with all the sentiments of Councillor Greason and Councillor Uri, and I think that there are things in here that really mean things to people. The support that the new leadership programs have had for farmers. Our biggest contributors in the region. Farming is such an important part. Our agricultural sector, is sometimes under a lot of duress, and I think that having those social events for well-being in our remote communities is so important to support the work that the important work that people are doing, and also just to thank the officers for this report and all the work that they do, and for the councillors, because we sure do have a lot of discussions around the round table. So happy to endorse this, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Reeves.
Yep, thanks. I'll just like to note and congratulate the comms team again for a beautifully presented report. The graphics and the content are always fantastic, so please pass on my congratulations and thanks. Makes it very accessible.
And of course that report is in the agenda for this evening, which is on the Council's website if anybody would like to download and have a look at it. Councillors, if there are no more speakers for or against the motion, I'm happy to put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. That brings us to agenda item number 6, which is urgent business. CEO, do we have any urgent business this evening?
No, Mayor, we have no urgent business. Thank you.
Very good. And agenda item number 7 is confidential business. Do we have any confidential business this evening?
There is no confidential business this evening either, Mayor. Thank you.
Very good, which brings us to agenda item number 8, which is meeting close. So thank you everybody for your participation this evening, both in the chamber and elsewhere. Anybody viewing at home? Junior Rotarians, thank you for your participation in this evening's meeting, much appreciated. And we will close the meeting this evening at 7:09 and bid everybody a farewell and good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good night.
Good night, councillors.